plant is bigger than you, my love.
Yeah, it's gotten quite big. So because they are quite big and because we're about to go into the growing season, we need to clear these guys out. And if you don't know, it's tobacco. We accidentally bought it last year thinking it was going to be this version of large kale that they have here in Portugal, but it's not. And we ended up with tobacco in our beds. Subsequently, we've had to do a lot of research about tobacco. But today, we're going to take them out and then we're going to put the leaves and the seeds to good use so that we can continue the story of the tobacco plant.
So what is step one here? Looks like you're just harvesting the flowers.
Yeah, well, the flowers, but more so the seeds. So this is what you should wait for it to be dried up like this before you harvest it. But I've been waiting for months and it hasn't dried up.
Well, it just keeps making new flowers.
So I'm just going to harvest them and dry them out and see if there's any seeds to save. One of the things that we did wrong, because we didn't know that it was tobacco, was we planted it in with the vegetables. The tobacco leaves can act as a really good natural insecticide repellent, but the plant is actually an attractor. So it attracts all the bugs to it. And that also means then that anything that's growing in its vicinity becomes fodder for those same bugs. So you're actually meant to plant the plant away from your garden to attract the insects there and not onto your vegetables.
Right, so we basically laid out a red carpet and said, come on in to the vegetable area.
Exactly. So if I can save some seed, then I can grow some from seed, and then we can plant some for this season away from the vegetable garden to hopefully deter the insects from coming here. And then we can use the natural insecticide, which I'm going to make from the leaves, to spray where we do see things like aphids, etc. So I'm just going to put them in this bag to begin with. Then later today, I'm going to go through and actually separate out the seeds so that I've just got like those parts, the actual parts that have the seeds in. I don't need all the flowers and stuff. And then I will put it all back in the bag, hang the bag, hopefully then it all dries out. Oh, look at that massive one. What are you doing, mate? Huh.
Very cool. I've started to see a lot more worms recently. I don't know if it's just because we've had some rain or what, but there were lots in the compost when I turned it the other day.
Go to it.
That's awesome.
Good job. Alright, so seeds are off. I left the ones that are like still haven't even got to flower stage because they won't have any seeds. Step 2 is to harvest off the leaves that I can dry out and use. So yeah, in the last summer there was loads of leaves, and you're meant to wait for them to go yellow and then you harvest them and you dry them out. So I have loads drying in the house. Not all of these are ready. So this one and this one kind of candidates, but everything else is a little bit too green still. But we need the bed space, so it's got to come out, and I'm going to try and save as much of it as I can. Important to note, we don't smoke, number 1, and number 2, is not illegal here in Portugal to grow tobacco. We've had comments about that before, but it's not legal here, so it's quite fine for us to be doing this. Interesting how they've all got these little offshoots.
And do you think we can put this in the compost?
No, you can't. The nicotine would be
Too
doesn't
much.
break down properly.
Ah, right.
So no good.
Okay, good call.
So that has to go into the normal rubbish, unfortunately.
And for anyone who's upset that we're taking away all the flowers from all the bees, we're going to be putting in a beneficial hedgerow all the way down this path here. In fact, this wall is going to be coming out. We're going to be rebuilding it and yeah, putting in a whole load of flowers, maybe some more tobacco, lavender, chamomile, echinacea, other names of flowers that I don't know. And yeah, we're going to be making sure that there's plenty of flowers for the bees and all the other beneficial insects that we want to attract to the garden. Getting warm.
Getting a bit warm. It was 5 degrees or something when we got up this morning. And it's definitely much warmer now. Okay, so I've taken all the leaves off. This is what we ended up with. Add that to the collection we have in the house, and I'll show you that a bit later as well, how they look when they're dried. But now I'm just gonna, oh, our friend is back. Now I'm just gonna take the plants out. And what's interesting is they are really sturdy plants. They have this really thick, woody stalk to them. And I guess that's how they manage to support their weight when they're standing up. It's quite significant. So that's the plants out of the ground, and I might try and take a few more leaves off of this because might as well. But let me take you to the house and show you the other leaves that have been drying since the summer. So, sticks. Yes. What are you doing? We're finished.
Are we? I think the editor decides when we're finished.
Okay, right. Well, I'm walking over there. Yes, I see you there. Okay.
We'll see. I don't think so.
I'm sure this is not how they do it in a professional tobacco factory. However,
this
we
is
are
not
not
one
professionals.
of those.
Stick it over there. Pretty easy. Tobacco factory in here. So, this is one of the 2 bags that I harvested the other day. This is a bag that I harvested, I don't know, December, November, and it's been hanging in the kitchen shed. And then we sorted through one of the bags the other night by the fire, but it wasn't any good for videoing, so I've left this for today. So I want to show you what we're looking for. So this is a seed pod. If you compare it to like the size of my fingernail, that's what we're looking for. So these really brown ones are from this bag, just to show you what they look like, versus these ones were the ones that we got from the other bag like this that I harvested the other day. And now they should dry out and start to look like that. The mistake that I have made in the past, maybe these are too little, is sometimes they don't develop. So they probably don't have any seeds in them. This is what we learned after going through a whole bag of this. There's lots in here, but unless they have the flower kind of dropped off or shriveled up, it's unlikely that the seed pod has actually developed. So this one might be okay. Again, just compare it to the size of my fingernail. Dirty fingernail. That's about the right size. But then if I take this one, for example, still really green, and the flower hasn't actually come out of that, so that one's no good. It won't have developed any seeds. So it's just to kind of eyeball it, and more or less, most of this will, oops.
Casualty.
Most of this will not be any good. And I think that's, the seasons here over the winter is not the time to be harvesting seeds. I should have done it all before we went into the autumn, but I didn't know. And each of these ones, they're going to have like hundreds of seeds. So we didn't harvest these from the tree, so we didn't come and pick them off. They had already fallen off or were in the process of falling off. They're already kind of dried and shriveled up. and I can already see, so for example, like loads of them compared to the fresh harvest. So that's the trick. Number one is to do it in a different season, i.e. end of summer, and to just wait for them to dry up and then pick them off. The problem is we often forget and then I just find them all over the floor and I feel like it's a bit too late and then I don't do anything because I've got a gazillion other things, but you know. But I only need a couple of these, so not all is lost. It's my phone. So I finished these ones and we've got a few more, actually, like maybe a dozen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the fresh ones and put them back into a brown paper bag and hang them up. I think they need about a month or so. So we will come back when that is done and when the leaves are dried, and then we'll do the next step in preserving the tobacco and the tobacco leaves and also the seeds.
You're too short.
Yes, I know. So, it's magically a couple of months later, and our tobacco has dried, and I'm going to take the dried leaves and shred them and make almost like tobacco that you would have for smoking. Chickens! And I'm also going to take the dried seeds and take them out of their pods and then put them aside. It's too late in the season this year to sow tobacco, but I will start again next year. So, dried leaves. If these weren't 100% dry, and pretty sure it is, so it could probably do with being put in a dehydrator for a couple of hours. If this doesn't work out so well, then the next lot I would put in a dehydrator. So I don't know if there's a more efficient way of doing this. Probably there is. It's really interesting. I mean, I'm not a smoker, but this doesn't look like the tobacco that you have in cigarettes.
Oh, I think it's just not as fine. So you could shred it with a knife, maybe.
It feels, give a look. It's very different in texture.
Oh, it's very papery.
Very papery.
Interesting.
Very different. Anyway.
Doesn't really smell much either.
No.
Interesting.
I will shred this, and then I'll stick it all into a glass jar. And then what happens when we need it, we will grab a handful and stick it in 3 or 4 litres of water. You let it steep for anywhere from half an hour to a day, depending on how strong you want the pesticide to be. Pesticide?
Yeah, pesticide.
It's a pesticide. And the stronger it is, number one, the more likely it is to kill pests, but also the more likely it is to kill the beneficial insects as well, like ladybugs and stuff.
So this is good for aphids, to get rid of aphids.
Aphids and slugs.
And slugs, but obviously ladybirds eat the aphids, and ladybirds are good, and so you don't want it to be too strong to kill those.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a fine balance depending on how many aphids you have or what your problem is. Yeah, and so you only spray it also onto the actual insects. There's no kind of preventative, spray it on pre blah 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 blah. No, so when you see aphids, then you spray it. It's also advisable not to use it on any plants that are in the same tobacco family. So that includes tomatoes and potatoes, but things like green beans that typically do attract a lot of aphids, really good.
We get a lot of black fly on our beans, so I wonder if it would work for that.
Probably.
It's a slow process.
Yeah, it's one of these sit around on a lovely morning with your chickens and process your tobacco leaves.
Do you guys remember we said no chickens on the deck?
I have not been checked.
Go and lay an egg.
The other thing to say about this, let's call it tobacco tea, is that it really only lasts for a couple of weeks. So that's why you don't want to make it until you actually need it. So you make it, You put the tobacco leaves, into a big jug of water. You let it steep for
some time.
Come back, filter it, so strain out all the tobacco leaves, and then that resultant liquid, which is kind of murky brown, put it into a spray bottle, spray it onto your plants, and then store it somewhere kind of dark and cold out of the light, and it'll last for a couple of weeks. Hi! No. This is a no chickens on the table rule as well. Come on. No chickens on the deck. Come on. Chickens! So no one told us that free-ranging chickens is actually quite time-consuming. Chasing them out of the veg patch, off the deck.
Out of the kitchen.
Out of the kitchen. They've not discovered the tent yet, thankfully.
So I shredded some with a knife. It's finer, but it's exactly the same. I'm going to put that in there.
Yeah. So, a couple of things I would do differently next time. I would not use rubber bands to hold them together. Many of our rubber bands disintegrated. So I think next time I'll use some wooden clothes pegs. I think I also put too many leaves in the bunches. So again, I would try to do less so that more air can get in there. And maybe regularly go and change the position of the clothes pegs so that part of the leaf gets exposed to the air to dry out, because some of that was a little bit not as dry as I would have liked. But it doesn't really matter in terms of, like, if you're making tobacco tea, that it's 100% dry because we're not smoking it or whatever.
You don't want it to go mouldy.
No, and that's exactly it. You don't want it to go mouldy. And I would also guess that this would last a season in jars. I don't know the longevity of it, but I would think that till next season is enough. And I think this season, when I go to sow some of these seeds, I'll only do like 1 or 2 plants because it's a lot of leaves, and our garden's not that big. We don't need that much.
You can have lots of plants and then not harvest all the leaves.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they're good. They are pest attractors, so just as a plant, they will attract the pests to them rather than to your vegetables. So don't plant them in with your vegetables, plant them nearby, but with things that don't have things where you care that the bugs get to, like flowers and stuff. We will seal this up. I will stick it on the shelf with all of our other collection of things. And that is probably a little bit more than 1 batch worth of tea. So 3 or 4 litres with a big handful.
So it's at least 2.
I've got big hands? No. Yeah, so it's a cup, whatever a baking cup measure, which in this case a handful's fine. Maybe 2. So that'll last us quite some time before I need to go and do the next set of leaves. And because it's the summer now, they can hang in the house, no worries. These are our dried seed pods. There should be tons of seeds in here, and I believe that this is the most effective way to do it. The seeds will fall through the sieve into the bowl, and the rest of the coating, the pod, won't. Have a look at this. I don't know if you're going to be able to get in close enough.
Whoa, they are tiny. Holy crap. They are very small seeds. They remind me of like a celery seed.
Interestingly, when we had them not dried, I didn't think we had that many that were viable, and now I see that we have many.
Well, we don't know how viable they are, but we've got lots of seeds.
Yeah, we have. No, I couldn't even see the seeds in the few that I had opened before we put them aside for drying. Oh my god, there's so many. Yeah. So it seems like the smaller pods don't have anything in them.
They really are tiny.
Oh, there's a lot in here. This tea string is too small, I think. There's lots in there. Okay.
Okay, nice idea. Bad execution. Are you using my pastry brush?
Yeah. There's like 20 million thousand seeds here.
Did you count them?
So there you go. We have turned our mistaken purchase of tobacco plants into a natural pesticide and some seeds for our beneficial hedgerow. Although, if it's an insect attractor, is it a beneficial hedgerow plant? Let's say it is. Yeah, so if you find yourself with a tobacco plant, here's what you can do with it. So that's it for today, and we'll see you in the next one.